Hey everybody, it's Emily at Arc Schooling, and welcome back to another episode of Homeschool Tidbits. Welcome to Build Your Library's Homeschool Tidbits, Episode 16, An Atmosphere, a Discipline, a Life. In this weekly video series, I'll delve briefly into a topic related to homeschooling, and I'll share some of my knowledge with you as a longtime homeschooling mother of 4 children, 3 of whom have graduated. Today, I want to dive back into our Charlotte Mason discussion. One of Miss Mason's most famous mottos is education is an atmosphere, a discipline, a life. And that quote basically sums up her entire education philosophy. So I thought it deserved its very own tidbit to talk about what that actually means and how you can incorporate these ideas into your own homeschool. Let's start with atmosphere. Education is an atmosphere. What do you think of when I say atmosphere? Do you think about the air around you? Well, that's what we want education to be, something that our children breathe in daily. We want to build a home environment for our children that will immerse them in learning, at times without them even noticing that's what they're doing. Maybe the word atmosphere in regards to education makes you picture a physical classroom, but that isn't what I'm talking about. Building an atmosphere of education in your home encompasses the total encouragement of learning. It means reading together daily. It means talking about anything and everything, encouraging your child to ask questions and then seek out those answers. It means letting them make mistakes and letting them explore, even getting dirty. When you give your child this freedom, learning becomes second nature. They do it without even realizing it, just like breathing. A huge benefit of homeschooling is that we're able to take our children out into the world much more frequently. We can go explore museums, historical sites, and state parks. We can talk to people who are out there in the world doing work in those places. People tend to imagine homeschoolers as being reclusive, hiding their children away from the world, but the reality is quite the opposite. We are not trying to replicate a traditional classroom experience at home. Rather, we want to bring into our home things that will inspire learning. Books, art, nature, they all have an important place in our overall atmosphere of learning. We don't need desks or whiteboards or numerous educational posters or a lecturing teacher. Instead, we should consider what our children love and what they are inspired by, and then fill our homes with that. By saying education is an atmosphere, it is not meant that a child should be isolated in what may be called a child environment, especially adapted and prepared, but that we should take into account the educational value of his natural home atmosphere, both as regards person and things, and should let him live freely among his proper conditions. It stultifies a child to bring down his world to a child's level. Education is a discipline. Habits. We want to encourage our children to have good habits that will help them later in life. This is what Charlotte Mason is talking about when she says education is a discipline. We must help our children and ourselves to form good habits. I once read that if you do something for 21 days in a row, it will become a habit. I know it's much easier to let bad habits form, like scrolling my phone mindlessly or ignoring my messy kitchen so I can watch one more episode on Netflix. So how can we encourage good habits in our children? There are obvious habits like toothbrushing and basic hygiene that we want our children to have, but why not also make daily reading a habit? Or the habit of observation, for example, when you're outside. Are you carefully looking at the world around you, or are you distracted? Charlotte Mason wanted children to learn to carefully observe the world around them. That's why she encourages nature study. It's not just about backyard science. It's about honing a skill, learning to really look at something, and sitting quietly for a few minutes while you do. There are many habits that we can teach our children that will be useful in their adult lives. We can teach them to be punctual by having regular start times for your school day. We can teach our children the habit of neatness by doing careful copy work. We can teach them to be attentive by concentrating on short lessons and encouraging narration. Of course, we also want to teach them the habit of reading. And the best way to encourage these habits is by doing them ourselves. We must be mentors to our children. If you want them to learn the habit of punctuality, but you are always running late, well, it's simply not going to work out. We need to make these habits a priority in our own lives and then demonstrate to our children why these things are important. The discipline of habit is at least a third part of the great whole, which we call education. And then finally, education is a life. Charlotte Mason believed that education was a living thing. She also said that our minds need ideas in order to thrive. Education, therefore, is about feasting on ideas. One of the most important aspects of Charlotte Mason education is that we do not spoon-feed our children information. Rather, we give them ideas to ponder. And the vehicle for this, of course, is living books. Through living books written by a passionate author, written in narrative form, we can endlessly feed our children's minds. We want them to think deeply about things and make their own connections. We read together, and we encourage them to read independently. We talk about what we read. We maintain a timeline or book of centuries to help us see the grand scope of history in a more concrete way. We keep a nature journal and work at the skill of careful observation while also learning about the flora and fauna in our own backyard. We look at great art and we listen to a wide range of music. We read poetry and Shakespeare. We enhance our math studies with manipulatives and games and living math books. Our children's education should be rich with ideas. That is the only way to make that information stick. Children who are fed lists of facts through dull textbooks will remember those facts just long enough to pass a test. But children taught with living books, books teeming with ideas, that is the kind of learning that sticks around long after. In the early years of a child's life, it makes perhaps little apparent difference whether his parents start with the notion that to educate is to fill a receptacle, inscribe a tablet, mold plastic matter, or nourish a life. But in the end, we shall find that only those ideas which have fed his life are taken into the being of the child. All the rest is thrown away, or worse, is like sawdust in the system, an impediment and an injury to the vital processes. If you found this video helpful, I hope you'll check out Build Your Library Curriculum. Build Your Library is a secular, literature-rich homeschool curriculum inspired by Charlotte Mason's philosophy of education. Based on nearly 20 years of homeschooling, I created the curriculum I wish I had when I first started teaching my own children. I've spent thousands of hours cultivating the best literature to enhance your children's studies. Our lesson plans make homeschooling simple. Just open the lesson plans, gather your books, and go. Our easy-to-use lesson plans include everything you need to homeschool. Just add math. Choose from our full-year K-12 levels, as well as our fun topical unit studies. With Build Your Library, you will cultivate a home library filled with captivating literature and raise children who will become lifelong learners. So snuggle up with our lesson plans and a good book or three and have your best homeschool year ever. I hope you found this tidbit helpful. Come back next week for more homeschool inspiration. Until next time, happy reading. Bye.